Okay, the watch list video for Monday, September 12th, 2016. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing that I just found out on Sunday afternoon that the market was down like 400, the Dow was down like 400 points on Friday because I only traded the first hour or so. Got my daily goal in the bank, and I guess that SPY just kept falling. Look at that. That's a nasty candle. Let's look at that on an intraday basis. Yeah, it's just all day long selling and closing on its lows. That's pretty bearish. Um, Old resistance around 212-ish. You can see it here. This was kind of the breakout area of a cup and handle. That might be an area of support. I'm not going to get in the way of anything on at the opening bell tomorrow, but I'm just going to do what I always do and have a watch list. But it is important. I talk about every day. I would log into make this video and I would say, well, another day, we're still in that range, still in the range, still in the range, right? But now we do have an actual event where we're pretty heavy volume and down outside of that range. In my opinion, the market needs it. You had massive volume back here, and if you go back, and then you had this where it bounced and then closed near its lows, and the next day it just tanked, lost the 200-day, big volume. There's really no support to the left. At this point, if you can just remember, at that point, it felt like we were heading down and never going to bounce ever, right? So you got to be careful with your mindset when you look at the market on what you're expecting. I generally try not to expect anything, but just keep that in mind. That felt like the end of the world back here, and literally within 2 weeks we're taking out all-time highs. So you never know what to expect, but certainly not going to be a very bullish sentiment first thing Monday morning. So we'll just wait for the proper setups and trade them if we get them, right? So let's go into the watch list. I'm going to start with, I always try to have at least one stock that I think is worth having on Bounce Watch on an intraday basis. Remember, I am not a swing trader. I do not hold overnight. So when you watch my videos, I'm looking for something that I can catch a trade in the very next trading day. Okay, that's it. I'll be back in cash before the closing bell. And if you know me at all, I'll be back in cash before noon and be done trading, really. So anyway, so SWKS in 4 sessions has fallen from 75.43 down to almost 66. Had some nice bounces off right below 64, but whenever you have several days in a row down and then you get kind of a long day, big range day and bigger volume, a lot of times you get a bounce the next day or the day after that. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this one on Bounce Watch. Certainly some support there to the left, pretty close. BCEI had a really, if I take Friday's candle out of it, it's a really pretty handsome chart as far as, yes, it's beaten up, and then it finally found support down here. Then you got a big volume spike, kind of a little cup and handle again, and then a breakout, right, above this range. So this is a pretty handsome chart for, kind of a follow-through short squeeze. But then Friday, the market was super weak. And, actually, you could argue this one held up pretty well. So I do want to watch that one. I still think that one might break out. And certainly, if it gets over 140 one of these days, it might rip higher. So let's keep our eyes on it. I'm going to glance at USO. A little bit of a, it looked like oil was going to take off to the upside. Look, would take Friday's candle out of it, right? You had big volume. I think there was a big draw on the oil numbers on that day. That was, Thursday? But the problem is with oil, now you've completely erased all of Thursday's gains in one day. You had the gap down and closing at Thursday's low. That doesn't mean oil won't catch a bid again, but keep that in mind when you're looking at stuff like BCEI that is oil related. SKYS, again, known for big spikes, but here it failed, gapped up on earnings here, and now you're 2 days down, but you are back into support, so that one might be worth watching for a bounce on Monday. CONN is up 3 days in a row, so I'm not too anxious to be trading this one on the long side on Monday, but it did have nice volume for this 3-day rally. So if this can, I don't know, trade in a narrow range or maybe gap down a little bit, this is one of the more bullish charts out there, right? It's a really nice 3-day move. On Friday, I happened to catch this just on a break of this little 5-minute opening range because it was on watch, right? Because it was so strong on Thursday. And I got along at like 8:15-ish on Friday. And within, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it was up over 870. I made, 400, 500 on, I can't remember. But, that plus one other trade made my day. I didn't kill it on Friday, but still got my daily goal in the bank. I don't generally like to watch something after 3 days up as a long, but just keep this one in mind, okay? I think it needs to come in for a couple days. We'll have to wait and see what the market does, but this one should be on watch all week for another potential long. Love to see at least one red day early on in the week, and then it'll be back on squeeze watch again. SORL, super low volume. I know we're not in love with this one, but certainly over the top of this flag might get going. SPU, had a green day. It bounced off the 20 day. I called this one long in chat on Friday, right over this little flag. Okay, SPU's been one of the craziest stocks on the planet, and then on Friday it opens up here. These are 5-minute candles. Just keeps falling, just keeps falling. All of a sudden, bidders come in, and then this is interesting to me if it can break the high of the day, which would be 1058, right? You'd think you might get a short squeeze because it's had such crazy moves. Well, it did a nice thing. It gave us a little flag below the high of day on a stock that's had crazy recent action, possible short squeeze, right? So I called this long, I think 1046. In other words, if it kind of cleanly broke this flag, 1046 with like a 1030 stop, so 16 cents risk. There it is. You see the volume coming in as it lights up the new high of day ticker, and in 15 minutes rips to 1140 something. So that it ended up kind of flagging after that. So because now we've got a green candle, and we saw that beautiful trade that we were part of on Friday, I want to watch that again on Monday to see if it doesn't give another setup. Okay, APVO, really big volume for this one. You can tell it's a relatively new issue, and this was super strong. I think the market just got a hold of it, right? Because the market was so weak. I showed you the SPY at the beginning of this video, but you could argue this held up fairly well with the SPY tanking. So tomorrow, Monday, we might get a nice trade in that one. Let's keep our eyes on it. PRAN, sort of a sleeper play here, but on this day, and this is one of my criteria that I look for on stocks is, have they made a recent relatively big percentage move? Because when they have, they get they get my attention. And this one went from 446 to 669 in one day back here. Done nothing ever since. And then you got a little volume spike on Friday, right? See the volume here? All of a sudden on Friday, you get a little volume spike. And remember how weak the SPY was? This thing closed strong. So let's look for maybe a red to green, something like that in PRAN. EVI, this huge volume stick here, this would have been Thursday, was still only 400,000 shares. It'll show you how thin that thing is. But it held up pretty well on Friday, again in a weak tape. So I do like this long over Friday's high over 654. It might retake and bust through that 7, so let's keep our eyes on EVI. Thin stock though, so be careful. CLRB had a really nice pop on Thursday and an inside day on Friday, and another example of relative strength. So I like this one over Friday's high over 320. It might just retake Thursday's high and continue higher. So that's an interesting setup too. And then lastly, RLJE. A little bit of a volume spike on Friday, and again, another example of relative strength. And this one, what was the date here? August 22nd, went from 195 to 363, and relative strength on Monday on a little extra volume. There might be something brewing there too. I'm going to leave it at that. We will add gappers on Monday morning as well if we can find any that are worth watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday.